The training hall went quiet the moment Draven pointed at me. Every cadet in that massive steel arena turned to look. Hundreds of eyes from a dozen different worlds locked onto me at once, and I felt the weight of every one of them. Draven stood at the center of the ring, arms crossed, his 4-meter frame casting a long shadow across the floor. He was the top cadet of our year, a Karathi warrior bred for strength that no human could ever match, and he was smiling at me the way a predator smiles at something small. "You," he said, his deep voice echoing off the metal walls. "Earthboy, step into the ring." I did not move right away. I was standing near the back wall, minding my own training, when he called me out in front of everyone. My name is Ethan Marsh, and I was the only human cadet at Caldross Academy that year. I had spent 6 months trying to stay quiet, trying to learn, trying not to draw attention. That plan ended the second Draven decided I was his next joke. "Come on," he said, waving me forward. "Or are humans too fragile to even try?" Laughter spread through the crowd. Some of it was nervous. Some of it was cruel. A Velkari cadet near the front covered her mouth to hide a grin. An instructor named Torin stood by the control panel, arms folded, watching without expression. He was the only one in that room who had ever actually read my file. I walked forward anyway. My boots echoed against the floor with each step. I was not afraid, but my heart was beating fast, and I let it. Fear sharpens focus if you let it work for you, instead of against you. My father used to say that fear is just your body getting ready. I had heard those words 100 times growing up, back on a small farm outside a town most people had never heard of. I never thought I would need them here, on a training deck orbiting a planet 300 light-years from home. "You know the history," Draven said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your kind fought each other for centuries before you even reached space. Wars over land, wars over water, wars over nothing at all, and now you expect to stand beside warriors who have never needed to fight their own brothers." More laughter. I stopped a few feet from him and looked up, because looking up was the only option when you were talking to a Karathi. "You done?" I asked. The laughter stopped. Draven's smile faded just slightly, the first crack in his expression. "You have a strange kind of courage," he said, "or a very short memory of your own weakness." "Let's spar," I said. "Rules of the Academy. First one to yield or get pinned loses. No weapons. Winner keeps their pride." Draven laughed, and this time, the whole hall laughed with him. He turned to the crowd and spread his arms wide, playing to them like a performer on a stage. "Pride," he repeated. "You want to talk about pride against me?" "You picked the fight," I said quietly. "I'm just picking the terms." That earned a few surprised looks from the crowd. Someone near the back whispered something I could not hear. Torin, the instructor, stepped closer to the panel and activated the sparring ring. A soft blue light rose around the circular floor, marking the boundary. Cadets began placing bets in hushed voices, and every single one I heard was against me. Draven rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck, the sound sharp in the quiet hall. He outweighed me by at least double. His species had thick-plated skin along the forearms and shoulders, natural armor built over thousands of years of tradition and combat training that started before they could even walk properly. Humans had none of that. What we had was something else. The signal sounded, and the match began. Draven moved fast for someone his size, faster than I expected, closing the distance in 2 long strides. I sidestepped the first attempt to grab me, feeling the air move where his arm had been a moment before. The crowd gasped. He turned, faster this time, and caught my shoulder, spinning me off balance. I hit the floor hard and rolled, coming back up on one knee before he could close in again. "Is that it?" he asked, grinning. I expected more from a species that supposedly refuses to quit. I did not answer. I was watching his feet, the way he shifted his weight before each move, the small pause before he committed to an attack. Every fighter has a pattern. It just takes time to see it. He came at me again, and this time I did not dodge. I let him grab my arm, and instead of pulling away, I stepped into him, using his own momentum to throw my weight against his center of balance. It was not enough to bring him down, not against someone his size, but it was enough to make him stumble half a step. The crowd went silent. A giant stumbling against a human was not something they were used to seeing. Draven's grin disappeared completely now. He came at me a third time, harder, faster, no longer playing for the audience. I ducked under his arm and drove my shoulder into his ribs, and he staggered again, catching himself against the edge of the ring. I backed off, breathing hard, watching him recover. "You keep getting up," he said, and for the first time, there was something in his voice besides mockery, something closer to confusion. "That's kind of the point," I said. He charged again, and I let him get close, closer than before. Close enough that his advantage in size and strength should have ended the match instantly. But size only matters if you can catch what you are chasing. I twisted at the last second, using his own forward motion against him, hooking his leg and driving my weight low. For one long moment, neither of us moved. Then his balance broke completely, and the 4-meter Karathi warrior went down onto the training floor with a sound that shook the room. Nobody laughed this time. I moved fast, pinning his arm before he could recover, using leverage instead of strength, because strength was never something I had to offer. Draven struggled once, twice, and then went still, staring up at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before, something between shock and disbelief. "Yield," I said quietly. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, barely audible, he said it. "I yield." The blue light around the ring shut off. The silence in that hall was heavier than any noise could have been. Hundreds of cadets from a dozen worlds stood frozen in place, staring at the human standing over the fallen alpha cadet of Kaldros Academy. I stepped back and offered my hand. Draven looked at it for a long moment before taking it, letting me help him to his feet, though we both knew he did not need the help. "How?" he said, not really a question, more like he was trying to understand something that broke a rule he had never questioned before. "You've never had to fight anyone who refuses to stop," I said. "Not really. Your people settled their differences a long time ago. Mine never did. Not completely. And we learned things the hard way, that your history never forced you to learn at all." Instructor Torin walked toward the ring, and for the first time since I had arrived at the academy, he was almost smiling. "Cadet Marsh," he said. Perhaps now the rest of the class understands why I never entertained the jokes made at his expense. Draven looked at me, and something shifted behind his eyes. Not anger, not embarrassment either, though there was some of that too. Mostly it looked like respect, the kind that comes only after being proven wrong in a way you cannot argue with. "I underestimated you," he said. "Everyone does," I answered, "at first." The crowd slowly began to move again, murmuring, some still staring, some already turning to their friends to talk about what they had just seen. I caught the eye of the Velkari cadet who had laughed earlier. She was not laughing now. Draven straightened up, rubbing his shoulder, and looked at me with something new in his expression. "Perhaps," he said, "there is more to your kind than history and stories." "There always was," I said. "You just needed a reason to look closer." I turned and walked back toward the edge of the ring, and this time nobody was laughing. Nobody was whispering jokes about fragile Earth boys or short lifespans, or history full of mistakes. The hall that had been full of noise only minutes earlier was now filled with something else entirely, something quieter and far more lasting. Respect does not come from being the biggest or the strongest. It comes from standing back up every single time you are knocked down, and making sure the last thing your opponent remembers is that you were still standing when it mattered most. That day, the entire academy learned something about humanity that no lesson could have taught them, and I had a feeling word of it would travel far beyond those steel walls, all the way across the stars, long before I ever graduated.